Andy Carteret. Who's next?
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm on the PRLAC also.
Of course. Thank you, thanks for being here. I'm just checking everybody, and you're also a new face, but we met you last time, right?
I'm Alex Flecker. I'm at meet with the Manchester Police.
Okay, yes. Did you say Flecker?
Flecker, yes. CK.
BK, okay. And of course, we know Butch now.
So it is. Yeah, so you're.
We have a quorum, Adam.
I think so. There's some faces I don't recognize, so I'm not.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do we need, and you just did it.
Andrew.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think we'll it's a beautiful thing. I think we can start. Eli.
Sure. So we'll call this meeting to order. Do you want to go around and do introductions, especially since there's some faces we don't normally see in person?
Yes, I think so. If everyone could just go around the room. 1 second, I'll get my camera ready for it. Okay, why don't you start us off, Adam?
Adam Lesney, staff at the Planning Commission.
Andrew Randolph with the Lisa St. John, New Hampshire, DFW, Divine.
Bruce Thomas, Town Fixer. Andrew Chester Planning Board.
And can the home audience, the virtual audience hear? Because that sounded soft to me, but, oh, wow. All right, you can hear better than I can. All right, thanks, everybody. Keep us going.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director for the town of Goffstown.
Maggie Baldwin, City of Manchester, DPW.
Mike Whitten, Manchester Transit.
Alex Mello, Town of Windham.
Sylvia Von Allock, I'm with the commission.
Butch Laker, Manchester Planning. Alex Flecker, Manchester Planning.
Dave Pierce, a presenter for Gulftown this morning.
Andrew Carteret, Chair of the Goffstown Pedestrian Bridge Committee.
Nate Miller, staff of the commission.
Dave Tilton with the commission.
Anthony Summers with the commission.
I think, and let's go to our virtual audience, Caroline.
Hello, Caroline Wilson, Dairy Planning Department.
Thank you so much. We have Carl.
Carl Weber, Town of New Boston.
Thanks, Carl. And let's see, we have Vincent Pagano.
Morning, everyone. Vincent Pagano, Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission.
And Matthew Baronis.
Yeah, Matt Baronis, also Central Regional Planning Commission.
Zach.
Zach Swick with the commission.
Grant.
Grant McGregor, Town of Hooksett.
Thanks, Grant. Jeff.
Hi, Jeff Rogers. I write a column for the Inklink called Pedals and Pathways, and I also volunteer at Queen City Bike Collective in Manchester.
Well, that's just very groovy. Thanks for being here. Lee.
Hey, good morning, Lee Levine, Federal Highway Administration.
Okay, and I know like the Easter Bunny and Santa, you know, are hand in hand, so you're looking like you're getting ready for that. It's a very bad joke. I'm sorry. I'll keep moving on.
Oh, thank you. I'm just trying to look like my hero, William Rose from New Hampshire DOT.
Thank you. All right. Alex Hawk.
Yeah, Alex Hawk, just a resident of Manchester. I also volunteer with QC Bike as well, technically.
Thanks, Alex. And also from QC Bike, we have June.
Hi, I'm June Trisciani, Resource Development Manager for Queen City Bicycle.
Great, and who walked in? Linda from Francis. Linda Kuhnhart from Francistown is also in the room. All right, oh, and we also have Tracy Whitehead.
Hi, MTA Cart.
From CART. And Becky, go ahead, Becky.
Oh, Becky Hebert from the town of Bedford.
We have a full house and there are a lot of bagels and grapes over there, so please make sure you help yourself. But we didn't hear Anthony, you didn't introduce yourself, did you?
Oh, I did.
Oh, you did, okay. We're seriously in a quorum, yeah. We could have 2 meetings right now, we have so many people. Anyway, all right, take it away.
Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is to review the meeting minutes from November 21st, December 12th, January 16th, and February 20th. Brenda makes a motion, second.
Can we do them all at once? Should we do them?
Unless there's
I'll second.
questions or comments.
I'll second that with a minor amendment to February 20th minutes. Alex is listed as Alex Flecker minus the K. It's FLOEKHER. So there's minor amendment to minutes.
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed?
We have 3 abstained. Bruce, Lucy, and Joanne.
Are we still good on that? We're all set.
We're all set.
Okay, great. All right. So moving into new business, the first thing on the agenda is the Transportation Alternatives Program Applicant Presentations.
Yep, thank you very much, everyone. I'm David Tilton from Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. This morning we'll be hearing 3 presentations from the towns of Goffstown, Manchester, and Wyndham. We'll be going in alphabetical order by town name, so that will be the order we'll be presenting in. So I will set up the first one. The first presentation will be from David Pierce and Andy Hedlund from Goffstown. So I'd like to note that the presentations are 10 minutes with a 5-minute question and answering period after. I'll be taking time in the back.
Thank you, David. So, yes, David Pierce, Andy Ketterick to my left. We are members of the Gulfstown Bridge Committee reporting to the Select Board. And also, I've been involved through the Friends of the Gulftown Rail Trail for going on 17, 18 years, providing various resources to our park department concerning the entire rail trail. You see on the view graph a conceptual design of a bridge we wish to build at what is the present end of the Gulftown Rail Bridge, located in the village center. That conceptual design is a copy of the Manchester Singer Bridge that's over the Piscataqua River. It was built in 2017. So conceptually, a bridge 2/3 of the length of the Singer Bridge could look like this, built in Gulfstown. So, and go ahead on. To start zooming you into the actual project site, you see there 2.1 miles coming out of Manchester on the Piscataqua Trail, 5.6 miles of the Gulfstown Rail Trail. Now it's fully improved, accessible. The project site is at the western end of that trail, as it then leads into 2 miles of on-road connection going to the New Boston Rail Trail, which is also fully complete. That 2.1 miles was designated by the select board as the preferred route for an on-road connection between the two paths. Either local roads or on the shoulders of 114. The shoulders there are 9 feet wide, and the DOT has allowed the town to put down bicycle paintings on the shoulders. So moving on, zooming in, there's the center of our village. And you see the Piscataqua River and the site of the bridge. And how the local roads in blue pick up 114 eventually going towards New Boston. So zooming in again. The project bridge is the white bar over the river. And you see how the path coming off that bridge going west, it will utilize existing crosswalks, allowing a safe passage over Main Street. That Main Street is also carries New Hampshire Route 13 and New Hampshire Route 114. So,
Yeah, I just want to mention, so I'm chair of the Goffstown Village Pedestrian Bridge Committee. And we were started in 2020. There's 8 members on that committee. So just to show the commitment, we've been looking at this. We had our first charter was to look at the feasibility of building a bridge over this portion of the river where there used to be an old train trestle. And then we had a second charter after that, which was really to continue the work from our first charter of finding ways to make this happen. And part of that was also to look for solutions to fund the project. And there's 8 members of the community that are on that committee since 2020.
and historically, there is no railroad corridor going west from where the bridge is. That railroad corridor was washed out in the 1938 hurricanes, and the tracks were removed. Go ahead. So, but existing from that trestle that had been burnt in 1976 are wonderful granite abutments. Those blocks are 2 feet by 2 feet by 10 feet long. They've been there since the 10 years before the Civil War. Conceptually, there's 2 possibilities, like the Manchester Singer Bridge. There could be a concrete cap on those granite blocks, or the footers of a new bridge could be behind those granite blocks with a new foundation, and the granite blocks would serve nothing more than a facade. But both are there. So the background is, yes, this rail trail is a unit of our park department. The town purchased the corridor in 2004. It's 5.5 miles long from the Manchester line into the southern bank of the river. We have done all the drainage and surface improvements by various phased projects since 2008 through last year, 2024. But important for this project, though, that we're proposing, the extension of the trail was endorsed in our master plan of the town. The Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, and also I'm glad to hear there's representatives from the Central Planning Commission here, a joint comprehensive economic development strategy by the 2 regional planning commissions in 23 endorsed a bridge extension over the river. Later in 23, our select board chartered a committee, and we're 2 of several members of that committee to explore options about the bridge. Ultimately, the concept moving forward was approved by the select board, and they also approved that on-road route connecting 2 local rail trails that I explained earlier. The southern bank of the granite abutment was part of the 2004 purchase. However, because of the expectation of wanting to build this bridge, the select board purchased what was that, and then a privately owned parcel that included the north abutment. So now owning both abutments, if we proceed into a contract, owning both abutments would greatly facilitate moving forward with design and construction. Addressing some of your evaluation attributes that you've asked us to talk about. Yes, technically, we're adding non-motorized trail features like, a bridge that's potentially over the river and on, the approach apron going into the local intersection of the roads. And one of the questions was, does it cross a gap? Well, yes, it crosses the gap in the river leading to a node, which is our community center. And oh, by the way, having an open air bridge over a river adds a scenic attribute to the trail users. Are we providing connections? Well, yes, there's a direct access into the village center, the node of our whole community. At that village center, you'll find all the information that is available, the town, various town facilities, retail facilities. Also 2 blocks away is the elementary school. Go down Mill Street, and a block away is the elementary school. Your one attribute is the connection into other facilities. Well, unfortunately, the center of an old New England village doesn't have direct connections to airports, trains, or buses. David? You particularly want to be interested in matching funds. Our select board has chosen to address the exact source of that 20% match once the grant has been approved. They realized that once the grant has been announced, there's another year before the money becomes available from the state. The select board has chosen to confirm where that 20% is coming from during that period of time. This is our 3rd transportation alternative grant, so they're familiar with the processes of providing the 20% match. The park department has full-time staff. They routinely perform maintenance on our rail trail. Of course, doing a steel structure is a new attribute of maintenance for them, but they will heavily rely on our public work, which have professional engineers and are able to engage in safety inspections or write appropriate contracts for a third party to do safety inspections. Do we budget for maintenance? Of course, the park department has a very detailed budget, many budget lines for their current services, equipment, and programs. So this rail trail is just one of 5 parks in our village, the town. They react accordingly.
I'm sorry, that's the 10 minutes up. Is there anything you'd like to wrap up or add?
Well, it was the maintenance is like full-time staff, right? Yes. Do we have written policy? Technically, no. The full-time staff fully understands after 17 years of landscaping activities on a rail trail exactly what.
And if I could just say, I think one of the biggest critical things is people currently taking the rail trail end right here, and they either come down this, across the bridge, or they don't. And when you look at this sidewalk, so I have, when I had younger children, crossing this bridge on a bike is dangerous. And I used to have like those, I have 2 daughters a year apart, and I'm having the bike carrier behind it. And this was a point where I would say, hold on, I'm gonna go as fast as I can. Because when you look at those lifts, it's dangerous. Well, I haven't seen any accidents.
So David, go back to
Andy.
no, Dave. Okay. You've asked us to mention the Southern New Hampshire document that describes high injury network. if you expand the image of Goffstown, the section of 114A, which is designated potentially as high injury network, our project is 4 miles away. So it has no influence on either positive, negative towards incident that might be involved in 114A. Next slide. However, well, DOT has not addressed this particular intersection of Main Street, Depot Mill as in their safety vulnerable road safety assessment. However, locally, vulnerability of accidents is a prime driver of this bridge. It would be stressful for families and children to use the the vehicle lanes you see there. Had I taken that picture by zooming down and including about 10 feet of pavement right in front of my feet, you would see bicycle, the shared bicycle lanes image painted on the asphalt.
Thank you. All right, do we have 5 minutes for question and answers. Let me stop sharing.
Thank you for your time and your evaluation.
That image, Dave, on the bridge with 114 and where you're talking about Factory Street, I'm guessing Factory Street is just for vehicles. It doesn't have any shoulders or.
As of 1 year ago, 95 apartments, rental apartments are in at the end of Factory Street.
But there's no sidewalks on it. It's a
Factory
run
Street,
to an apartment complex.
Factory Street is so narrow, old historic road, there was no room for sidewalks coming out of that 95 unit apartment leading into the village.
And if you're a pedestrian, you could go from the rail trail down Factory, you'd be on the side of the road, but you could walk the sidewalk on the bridge.
Oh, you could, yeah.
It's just mostly for a bicyclist, is what you're saying?
I would agree, but if you look at those sidewalks, I think they're only 5 feet
I
wide
measured them 2 nights ago, that's 5 feet wide.
over a bridge. So it is one of those sidewalks that if I'm walking my dog and people are coming at me, I'm
Right,
stopping to let that person go.
yes, right. Okay.
Thank you, Sylvia.
So the rail trail ends, and I've been on this and kind of remember that you kind of end and then you have to navigate the neighborhood in Goffstown, right? To get to the activity on Main
At the
Street.
end of our rail trail on, that Sylvia mentioned, Factory Street, there's a sign with the QR code. You can use your phone and immediately bring up a map of the route going to New Boston. And also at every intersection, there are directional signs on posts or utility poles, also providing clear instructions to turn left, turn right.
But
This
it
is
does
fine.
end at the south abutment.
Okay,
And, I've been in the other side and you see people come down the rail trail and stop.
right,
And take off their hats, sit there, and turn around and leave.
right.
We want them to come into town. We
We're-
want to welcome them into the businesses
And by having the bridge empty, trail users at an intersection where there's already sidewalk, we're forcing the trail users to properly use the safety of a sidewalk across a busy road.
And the new residents of the apartment complex, if they were on a bicycle, they wouldn't have a safe route to get to the trail. Would have to
I would agree with that. I mean, if it's
Or a
challenge,
safer route.
yeah, they would have a much safer, much more walkable.
Right,
Just feel, why wouldn't you take that bridge?
right.
What dollar amount would the 20% max be? Anticipated, what is the
250,
anticipated
I think
20?
260.
260,000.
And when you talk about, they've sort of deferred their budgeting strategy obviously I'm seeing the commitment, they've bought the property, Parks and Rec has maintained it, so I'm seeing commitment by the town. what's your thought on, how that discussion will go with them on the 260?
The select board will have three options really. Put the cost within an operating budget for the park department. Would be, under a contract led by Public Works. They would have a special article option on the town ballot in March. They would also conceivably could use impact fee funds, which they have done in the past, recreational impact fee funds for improvements on the railroad. And they would also welcome donation, once the contracts are underway and the bills become due, they would also welcome donations from the Friends of the Rail Trail as unanticipated revenue to offset these.
Did you, sorry.
So if 260 is the 20%, it's a $1.3 million project that sounds like it mostly hinges on safety improvements. But do you have any data? Have there been any bicycle or pedestrian accidents or injuries on the existing bridge?
No, it has not been, we're not aware of any accident.
But I would say that it's concerning as a person going over that bridge.
As I mentioned in the slide, it is, you have stress levels of various uses of public facilities. This would be a high stress level for a youth or a family.
All right, that's the 5 minutes is up. Our next present.
One more question,
Yep.
sorry, Dave.
No, I just had one.
Okay.
And do you have any letter from the Board of Selectmen that shows their support of the project?
They sent a letter of support.
Yes, only the letter of support when the application went forward to DOT.
Yeah, I'll make copies for the group. And yes.
I just wanted to follow up on that. David, do you want to mention, I mean, we have letters from the organizations in our hometown, conservation, economic development, and things like that. But we also have several letters from the SAU, school department, the Goffstown Main Street Program, Bike Walk Alliance, and the New Hampshire Rail Trail Coalition.
Mr. Tilton, did the commission receive the full application that all the
Yes.
towns sent?
Yep. Yep, and we do have the letters that were part of the package. Yep.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I'll say informally at the last Pumpkin Regatta, we also did a survey of, what people's thoughts were on this, having a bridge. And overwhelmingly, I get, that would be wonderful, that would be wonderful, that would be wonderful. So I think the community also sees the value of that. So when we talk about a warrant article or fundraising, there's strong support. We had about 100 people fill out that survey. It was very informal, and most of the people, most of them got there.
Did it ask? It said that they were in favor, but did that include the financial commitment to back it up? So they were in favor
I
of
believe that
spending
was on there.
260.
I don't know. I have the survey with me, but I believe there was a question like, would you support? It's a hot topic everywhere, right?
Yeah, it's a totally different question. Like conceptually, if someone were to just plop a bridge down, would you be okay with that? Yeah, it looks great. You spend $250,000 in local funding to build it.
Yeah.
Different.
Well, I just look at the big picture, there's such a savings. Having it would help.
Manchester's up.
Yep. All right, so now next we're gonna have a presentation from Manchester, which I will share. And Maggie Baldwin will be doing the presentation for Manchester today. All right, can everyone at home see that in full screen?
Yes.
Yep.
That 10 minutes goes by fast. My name is Maggie Baldwin. I am with the City of Manchester Department of Public Works, presenting what we're calling the Livingston Park Connector. I'll refer to it as the project. So this is just an aerial view of the city. The city limits are shown in red. The project area are the blue lines. So you can see. So you can see the exit 9, the I-93 exit 9 interchange at the little corner, and the project kind of connects to that and runs up Union Street. You have Goffstown, Bedford, area the east. The project includes about 4,600 feet of improvements along Hooksett Road in Manchester, and also about 2 miles of Union Street from River Road to Manchester. And also includes a small section of Clark Street, which is about 7. So I just wanted to give you a little context of each of these roads. This is Hooksett Road. You can see the aerial. I tried to identify where these pictures were taken. These were just done yesterday. So Hooksett Road, you can see it's 1 lane in each direction with a center turn lane, very small shoulders. And this, there's no sidewalk on the left, well, the bottom picture left side, which would be the west side, the park side. There is sidewalk on the right side, which is the commercially developed side, but there's a ton of driveways. There's some areas that don't really have well delineated space. The volume of Hooksett Road is about 14,000 vehicles. We did do a speed study. It was the primary speeds on the northbound percentile was 38 miles per hour. This road is posted at 30, so it was a little fast. So given the high volume of the road in sort of the access on the right side with the driveways, or the east side, sorry, because I didn't make it easy, so I'm taking these in opposing directions, but it's not very comfortable. There's no bike facilities out here at all. This is Union Street. Union carries about 6,000 cars per day. It is variable with pavement, 1 lane in each direction. Again, we did a speed study. The 85th percentile out here is about 44 miles per hour, which is it's posted at 30, so it's sustainably high. We kind of looked at Union in 2 different segments. You have the north portion, which is River to Campbell, and which you can kind of see on the aerial. Sorry, I'm not. So River's up here, Campbell's right about here. That's this top picture, so you can see it's a little bit narrower than the southern portion. There's no bike facilities. There's not sidewalk on either side. And then there's the south portion, which is Campbell to about Webster Street. So the paved area for this portion is much wider. It includes on-street parking, but none of the parking is marked. There's no painted shoulders. There is sidewalk here on the southmost portion of the segment. There's sidewalk on both sides, but as you move north, it's sidewalk only on the left side. There is no bike facilities on any of Union Street. And relative to the south portion, what I found is people, because of the width of the road, when people are turning off of the road, the through traffic just goes around them. So you create a lot of unpredictability with the way the road is used, which creates concern for, the walkers and the bikers. So based on the speeds and the uncertainty of the driver behaviors, you don't see a lot of people riding their bikes here. And in the north portion, you don't see a ton of people walking. So relative to Hooksett in Union, I just wanted to talk about access to the park. The park is a huge resource to this area, which I'll get into in a little bit, but the only accessible entrance to the park is midway between the segment of Hooksett Road that we're proposing for improvement. You can see the middle picture basically shows this access point. There's signalized intersections about 2,000 feet on either side of that, which are very wide, uncomfortable intersections to get through. And I do want to point out that there is no formal access from Union Street, even though Union Street basically abuts the park on the west side. There is informal access and non-compliant access. So there is informal access from Union Street, which I'm going to show in just a second.
Okay.
So.
Can always come up here and use them.
No, it's okay, I got it. So there is this informal access. This is Clark Street, but it is not compliant. So realistically, anybody coming down Union that wants to get to the park that might have mobility concerns either has to come along here and back up into the access, or there is an informal access up here off of Campbell at Juniper. But it means it dumps you out onto the trails around. So this is just a couple images of Clark Street. This is where we're talking about potentially looking at some access for the Union Street users. So this is getting into the criteria that we've been asked to talk about. This is basically an image of the project area as well as how it relates to existing and future bike ped and bus transit routes. So this is kind of touching on the non-motorized and connections to other modes of transportation. The yellow is on-road bike facilities that exist today. The orange is the future or proposed bike facilities. The light green are existing rail trails. The dark green are future rail trails. So it really just talks about the connectivity between the two different systems. You don't really break out the bus or transit services from the bike and ped facilities because they're all very intertwined. The other thing I want to just talk about is that the pink shaded area, that's the overburdened or disadvantaged area within the city. The orange is the overburdened disadvantaged area that is also subject to persistent poverty. So you can see that although the proposed project is, in the north end in the primarily residential neighborhood, it allows all that connectivity. It allows people in the center of the city to get to the north. It allows the people in the north to get to the center of the city. It allows a significant amount of transit opportunities. You do have a transit stop at the north end of Union at River. You also have it at the south end of Union at Webster. So it just gives you choices. Like I know for that transit run on River Road, it only comes once an hour. So it's pretty difficult to use that as your sole transportation if you need flexibility. So, and then I do want to point out that constructing these improvements will allow basically somebody in North Manchester to, at the conclusion of the rail trail projects, the South Manchester Rail Trail and Londonderry Rail Trails, you could almost get to pretty much get to the exit 5 bus terminal entirely. So this is just like the some of the resources within the city. It's the zoning map, so it shows you, these purple areas are, residential, and you can see as you get into the center of the city, it's more mixed use. It's the central business district. It's all about that connectivity. All these little pins are all those museums, churches, things that people want to get to. And I do want to point out that off the top of the page, Southern New Hampshire University would have a great connection into the city. And you also have the YBC property that is right now out there for potential development. One of the biggest resources, again, in this area is the park. What's important about this park is it has a huge amount of community activities. You have not just the park amenities, which is the hiking trail, the pool, the fields, but you have programs like Manchester North Soccer League, Queen City Flag Football. The school districts have practices there. And then most importantly to me is the Fun in the Sun program, which is a summer camp, a free summer camp put on by the city. The sinker is you have to provide your own transportation. So having options for people to get to this park is really important. So this slide just talks about the stewardship. We did have to go to the CIP committee and the board of mayor and aldermen to even submit an application for this project. DPW has full-time staff. We have equipment for maintenance. This really wouldn't be, we don't see this as being additional. We see this as being a reallocation of some of our maintenance practices to whatever the proposed improvements end up being. We are part of the high injury network. The pedestrians includes both Union and Hooksett, whereas the bike high injury network is does include Union. And then we wanted to just touch on like our vision. We haven't talked about really what we think will be the solution. It's a little bit more complicated than a rail trail because we do have a lot of good, typicals out there for that. We did feel like, we want to minimize right-of-way impacts. We want to set the target user for, low stress tolerance, which is kids, families, low confidence riders. We wanted to look at traffic calming to make it more comfortable for everybody. Whether we do the improvements at street grade versus at sidewalk grade. We have to look at the layout of crosswalks to see what's important. One of the things that I did really point out is that barrier that's created by that commercial district along Hooksett Road really prohibits people from the residents on the east side to be able to easily access the park. So, we want to look at all of that. We don't know what the right solution is, but we have this vision that this could really become a really useful connection to the denser areas of the city, while also providing the denser areas of the city some opportunity to use resources that they might not have.
All right, my apologies, that's the time. Is there any other? No, great, thank you very
Nailed it.
much.
That was fast.
So,
Question. Yeah, you talked about the informal access from, I think it was Union Street. What about the more northern neighborhoods? Is there any possible access, or will there be any improved access from the neighborhoods surrounding that right now, like on the north or west side?
So realistically, I think for Clark Street, that's where the informal access is. Because we own that right of way and because it abuts the park property, there would be no right of way, so it would make for a very easy connection. We would need to figure out how to get people to that connection if we did proceed. I don't know that there's any other opportunities for us to connect into the park from the north that would minimize sort of the effort, if that makes sense.
It just looks like from the map, that was included in the application, that there looks like a right of way. I don't know what that is, but it just looks like
Where
I'm just looking like right here. It looks like I don't know what that is. It almost looks like open space or something. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I would have to look. I think.
And you have, what is this? This is Juniper Street?
Yes, so there is access from Juniper Street, but it goes right into the trail, so it doesn't actually go into the main opening for the park. So.
But it goes into the trail, so.
Yes, yeah, so theoretically, in the trail, I believe is ADA compliant. So yeah, there is opportunities, but that even Juniper Street would require the user go on Campbell Street, which in itself isn't a great street to bike on. There's no bike facilities there either. And I think likely the reason we didn't pursue that is because I don't believe there's a wide right of way to really account for reality.
And there is no parking there.
There is at Juniper Street, correct?
Correct.
I'm not thinking about people driving there. I'm thinking of the neighborhood up northern neighborhood. There's a lot of residents there, how they can access.
Yeah, so theoretically, they could go down Campbell and get onto Juniper and come to the park. I think the idea was to sort of bring people onto Union and have Union be the primary route, and then to use the Clark Street.
Yeah, Campbell is a little dicey to walk across.
Yeah.
Additional questions? All right. Thank you very much, Maggie. And now we'll go to Alex Mello from Wyndham for the final presentation.
Helen with our Community Development Department in Indiana, and we submitted an application to improve an existing abandoned dirt path that we have. It's along an abandoned railroad corridor, a segment of the Boston to Maine Railroad. It runs southwest and northeast through town, and we're proposing to improve it with an 8 to 10 foot wide trail with a 2 foot shoulder on either side. And as part of the project, it would also include drainage improvements and improve some crossings with local roadways. I'll show you some pictures of how it's not the safest for folks who use it. And this has been in the works for over 20 years. It was first identified as a project in the 2003 Salem to Concord Bikeway Feasibility Study, and more recently in the joint regional planning commission between Southern New Hampshire and Central New Hampshire. The original trail plan was identified as a planned segment of a rail trail. You can see on the left-hand side that light green line on top of the aerial image shows the extent of the segment. It's 2.27 miles, and it traverses across some residential neighborhoods, conservation area called Foster's Pond, also some ball fields that we have off of Nashua Road, and then it continues northeast through a couple more residential neighborhoods before going underneath Interstate 93. There's two 12-foot wide box culverts that act as tunnels basically for pedestrians and bicyclists, and then continues underneath 93 onto North Lowell Road, which is a state-owned roadway, and then on top of oh, there you go. So right here is the Rockingham Rail Trail, and that basically brings you everywhere through Southern New Hampshire. So you can see how this is working. Oh, there we go. So this is the section that we're talking about here. This was an image that's from that 2021 regional trail plan. And this purple here is the existing rail trail that comes up from Salem into Derry, through Londonderry, and regionally through Manchester, Goffstown, Auburn, Canada. So this really would expand on that network that has been planned for over 20 years. And in terms of the connections, it brings you by the park and ride off of exit 5. It can give access to the airport and into the broader region as a whole. So this would really provide a lot of Windham residents with a connection to the broader region. And some goals that we're really trying to accomplish with it is, again, we're trying to encourage non-motorized travel. And we're also, and I'll show you some pictures, it's really unsafe right now, and it's not accessible to folks of all ages and abilities. And by increasing activity on our rail trails, we're hoping to generate more tourism and support our local economy. And again, this would provide a lot of connections to various neighborhoods in town, including natural resources and existing parks. And we're hoping that this actually can be used to maybe offset some vehicle trips and reduce some greenhouse gas emissions in town. And again, these connection points provide realistic opportunities for folks to consider this as an alternative transportation method. Again, so showing you some pictures of the existing trail and how unsafe it is. You can see some of the entrances, they're not well defined, and they're basically just people trampling on brush. And as people are using it, they're coming out and they're on the roadway basically. And you'll see in some pictures, they're not at the best spots. It might be on a curve in a road or at the bottom of the hill. And it's not great for folks that are coming out and trying to cross to get to the next segment. But you can see some of the condition of the pathway as it is today. It's not really flat. There's weeds going up underneath it. And there's no opportunity for water to really drain well. So during heavy rain, the water just pumps there for days. It's very shaded, so it doesn't evaporate quickly. And so we're trying to really improve the crossings, improve the pathway itself to really sheet water off more efficiently, and improve the accessibility for folks of all ages. So here's some of the crossings too. In this top left image here, that red line shows the path that folks would take to get from one side to the other. You can see this is at the bottom of the hill and it's on the curve. And it's really dangerous. If someone's hearing impaired and they may not hear a car coming, that's not a great situation. And then over here too, you can see that this road curves and there's also a steep drop off here as you're going down to the trail. And again, this is, believe it or not, this is actually where one would pick up the trail on Londonderry Road. And you can see the motorists may not see a pedestrian just popping out of the woods. So we're really trying to clean up these crossings and make them more formalized and visible so that motorists can see users crossing the trail. So our progress to date, I've got to thank the debate group and Keith Nordstrom. They've done a lot of pro bono engineering work for us. And you can see these areas are identified as wetlands. So Keith Nordstrom did some wetland mapping for us. They shared that information with the debate group who conducted a survey. And you can see they basically generally outlined the path, and this orange dashed line is possible shifting. So they've done for free, they've done preliminary conceptual engineering for us, and we're gonna have to look at more detailed how the grading affects where the path should go. Should it necessarily be a straight line, or should we start looking at slight adjustments to kind of work into the grade, which would help with drainage improvements? And we're looking at possibly some culverts to help alleviate some of the wetland, the water that's part of these wetlands just flow more naturally. And this is just a segment here. They've done this type of work for the entire 2.27 mile stretch. And the cost estimate you can see on the left here. This is one of the culverts that the state put in underneath 93. We're trying to really build off of their progress here. And in our grant application, we have a couple irons in the fire for this project. We've submitted it for a 10-year plan consideration. And as part of that, we got a current cost estimate from VHB, which is pretty solid. And they're projecting the entire project right now as $2.4 million. It's going to require a local match of $480,000. The town has not committed to that funding yet. We recognize that the most likely path for the town will be to put it on our ballot as a special warrant article and ask the voters to raise that money through taxes. And we recognize that there might be some opportunities for folks to provide some donations, which is common in town. We're very fortunate that our private citizens do like to donate to some community initiatives. So we recognize that. In terms of our local stewardship, we have a full-time highway department that currently manages and provides maintenance to our existing rail trail. So that would be the status quo there. And we have looked at maybe a gravel alternative to the path to maybe help reduce costs. And that's something we might pursue if we get the grant opportunity and if we really need to keep costs low to help entice our voters to vote yes, that's something we're going to think about. And that's all I had.
Perfect. That was fantastic on the dot. Thank you very much. All right, we have 5 minutes for questions and answers.
About the right of way, I saw right of way acquisition, do you anticipate any issues with acquiring rates?
This, the town owns both of it, east of 93, we have it agreement with the state that we want to use it, we'll look at ourselves at our costs. It's going to get tricky crossing North Pole Road, taking up the other rail trail. That would involve possibly. And part is where definitely need more engineering.
Connectivity, you showed the north installed sections of rail trail that it connects to, but there wasn't any indication of where it lets out or what it gets to in southern portion or southwestern portion. Could you speak to that and kind of attest to what is currently there and what the future idea would be for that?
So on the southwest side, there's really nothing. There's no, it basically stops at a roadway. There's no future opportunities there. There might be some on-road connections, maybe down to the Hudson, but those don't look into this right now. That would certainly be a phase 2 and this would more formalized.
Do we have any other questions?
Do you have any support letter from the Board of Selectmen?
I don't, I didn't ask them for one, but this has been a topic in town for over 20 years. They've supported it in the past. Our CIP supports it. And actually in 2015, there was a ballot item to fund a 20% match on a TAC application back then. Didn't get the TAP awarded to us, but the voters supported providing those matching funds at the time.
Do you know what the funds amount was at that time?
I think the total project cost back then was $800,000, so that's.
I just was wondering how it has to do with the other things.
Yeah, it will be challenged, I think, but everybody in town likes the idea of it, but do they want to financially support it?
Any other questions? Nope, seeing none. I would like to thank all our presenters for doing such a great job and putting up with me in your field of vision, flashing signs at you. My apologies for that. This afternoon, the TAP subcommittee will meet. We'll discuss the projects. At the next TAC meeting, I'll do a brief presentation to highlight those discussions in our project rankings, and we'll be looking for a TAC recommendation to the MPO. Thank you very much, everybody.
So the next thing on our agenda is consideration of the Commission FY 2025-2028 Transportation Improvement Program. Nate Miller.
All right. Can everybody see this in full screen mode at home?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right, good. So I'm gonna try to be really brief on this particular item because we walked through all of the projects last month used the majority of the tax time last month to walk through every project, some would say in excruciating detail. I don't intend to do that today. And I'm just going to note that we We did put this draft tip out for a 30-day public comment period on February 12th. We spent the February meeting here at the TAC and at the MPO walking project by project through the draft tip. Our 30-day comment period ends tomorrow, and we have received one public comment, which I will discuss in a moment. Tuesday, March 18th, will be our public hearing to consider adoption of the draft tip. So today is kind of the TAC's final opportunity to express any comments that you haven't already otherwise expressed, and make a recommendation to the MPO for Tuesday. The public comment we received was from New Hampshire DOT. They would like to add a district resurfacing project into the tip. This is for districts 3 and 6, and we only have one tiny little piece of District 6 in the town of Deerfield. So technically this does, a District 6 project does technically include the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. Though I'm not going to walk through all the details of this proposed project, other than to say that it's a district level resurfacing project. New Hampshire DOT is proposing it. New Hampshire DOT has confirmed that the funds are available for this project, and that including this project won't affect our fiscal constraint for the tip. So with all of that said, we would recommend that we could the commission concur with the DOT's request, and that we would add this project into our tip as a public comment. With that, I can walk through any of the projects in the tip if there are any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to spare you walking through every project in the tip again, and would happy to hear any comments, or if you are so inclined, happy to hear a recommendation to adopt the tip on Tuesday to our MPO.
Make a motion that we adopt the tip with the NHDOT modification as presented.
I recommend that the MPO adopt. Yeah.
Second. All in favor? Opposed?
All right. We move on to the next item. All right. Right on to the next item.
2027-2036 10-year plan regional project priorities.
Can everybody see this in full screen mode at home?
Yes.
Okay. So we haven't talked about the 10-year plan in any detail since the October TAC meeting when we discussed our initial priorities. But just as a reminder, this is the schedule for the 10-year plan. We finalized our initial set of project priorities, and we sent those to New Hampshire DOT in early November. They've had all of our information about the projects since early November, and they have been doing their own review internally. They have a 10-year plan committee within DOT that reviews what our engineers say about the projects and the cost estimates from our engineers, and they have their own review process, and typically the culmination of that is they send us a comment letter with their recommended cost estimates versus ours, and any comments they may have on the projects. So we got that yesterday. So I sort of dropped everything yesterday when I got that comment letter to digest the comments and talk through some things with New Hampshire DOT, and I wasn't even sure I would be able to put a presentation together to bring you something coherent today. But I think hopefully I do have something coherent for you, and we'll walk through the comments and go from there. So I have been working pretty much all day yesterday and into this morning to try to digest those comments and formulate a coherent recommendation. So let's walk through what the comments were. Before we do that, this is where we left off if you recall, we had 10 project proposals all told. We were really focusing on 7 of those. And then we had 3, the Catesby Lane Bridge in Bedford, Route 3 widening in Hooksett, and 102 safety improvements in Londonderry that were better fits for other approaches or other funding sources. And we're still working, we did have our engineer and we did send the Catesby Lane to Bedford. We do think that that is more appropriate for state aid bridge funding, although it may be Protect eligible if Protect ever comes back. Hooksett, the Route 3 widening project, we're looking at some transportation demand management initiatives with the town in the interim. James Veo and Adam Lasney in our office have been working with the town of Hooksett and looking at TDM options there to help alleviate congestion concerns there. And we do have a pending road safety audit application from last year for Route 102 that is still being reviewed by the safety section folks at New Hampshire DOT. So really on the left here are the 7 projects that were really the focus of our 10-year plan emphasis. And I'm going to walk through kind of one by one what we heard about those projects, and primarily the cost estimates. So the first was the engineering study for Beach and Maple Street in Manchester. This is looking at reallocating, a study to look at reallocating existing roadway capacity on Beach and Maple Street for active transportation infrastructure. We had VHB estimate that their estimate was $470,000. DOT, their estimate was $500,000. So very close to in line with, essentially in line with VHB. Everything new in the 10-year plan goes to the back of the line in the 10-year plan, as we've discussed many times. The back of the line in this 10-year plan would be either 2035 or 2036. So on a year of expenditure basis, when you're talking about today's dollars in a 2035 or 2036 context in year of expenditure, that brings us to 693, 392. So that's what we're looking at with the Manchester engineering study. In Bedford, the preferred approach for the multi-use path was to add funding to what is now known as Project 13692F. This is the Route 101 engineering study update that we put into the 10-year plan 2 years ago. That is currently in the 10-year plan. We want to add basically $100,000 of funding to that study to ensure that the study considers the design of a multi-use path. Because there are a lot of, we talked about this before, there's a chicken and egg scenario with what happens on 101 and what the design of a multi-use path needs to be, depending on whether it's a 5-lane cross section, a 3-lane, or something else. The design of a multi-use path is dependent on that future layout that will ultimately be determined through the 101 engineering study. So everybody's on the same page, it seems like, with that, and so we're going to add $100,000 to that engineering study. In the town of Hooksett, this is the exit 11 ramps with Hackett Hill Road intersection improvements. We did scope this with VHB. This is their concept drawing. A roundabout is their preferred alternative there. Our VHB estimate was 1.35 million all in. DOT's estimate was about double that. And so, and maybe that's just the world we're living in now, where construction costs are what they are, and maybe VHB sharpened the pencil a little bit too much on that project. So, we're going with New Hampshire DOT's estimate. We will go with New Hampshire DOT's estimate on all of these projects. And so that brings us to the $2.6 million today on a year of expenditure basis is $3.852 million. So that's the all-in cost on a year of expenditure basis for the Hooksett roundabout. Yep.
As the time goes by and you get closer to the date of, my project, Did those numbers change, or why wouldn't they just put your expenditure costs down?
So this gets programmed, the way it'll get programmed and I think this one, I have to look, I think it's 2036 is construction of this. It will get programmed in 2036 in the 10-year plan for $3.852 million, which is, yes, yeah.
Thank you.
And so when we constrain our regional allocation is a little bit over 10.5 million. That is in year of expenditure dollars. So it's the inflation adjusted amount that really matters to us. In the town of Windham, Alex just talked about this project. And so before the TAP application process even took place, when we did our 10-year plan solicitation, the town of Windham put that project forward that Alex just talked about, the Windham Greenway improvements from Meeting House Road all the way to North Lowell on the other side of 93. Alex talked about VHB's estimate of 2.4 million. DOT came back with a slightly higher estimate yesterday of 2.6 million. The difference there being in the engineering phase work. VHB had estimated engineering at 300,000. DOT thought that should be 500,000. And so that $200,000 difference translates to that on the bottom line. So year of expenditure basis. So year of expenditure basis on this one is 3.63 million. So it's the same 2.6 million. You see the year of expenditure and Hooksett is 3.8. Year of expenditure on Windham is 3.6. That's just because Windham happens to be 2035 instead of 2036. And that's the difference of that.
States say why the.
For the Hooksett project, you mean, Bruce? I'm assuming you're thinking of that one in particular. They looked at, I think it was Conway and Swansea, recent roundabout projects, the actual bid results and what they're seeing for real costs, which is reasonable. That's what they're seeing for costs. And we all share the goal of not putting anything in the 10-year plan that is underfunded that we're chasing in future years. So
They also
yeah.
Question on the Wyndham project. Answer, but one, what is the match if it's in the 10-year plan?
It's the same.
Same.
Yeah.
And so if it's that far out, I think it'd be even a much bigger match.
On a year of expenditure basis, yeah.
So I'm wondering, Alex, do you prefer the project as a 10-year plan or a TAP?
A TAP to be cheaper overall. I talked to Nate yesterday. Basically, in 2035, we have to come up with $760,000. We could start putting $76,000 in the capital reserve fund in the next 10 years. Our voters may see that on the ballot and feel better about that rather than 400 all at once. So we'll have to.
Have reserve funds been successful with them in the past?
We have 30K in a reserve fund right now.
For
the Greenway trip.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
So, in that approach, they would have between now and, the year of construction to plan and build a reserve if they wanted to approach it that way. You may have a question of, well, this project is simultaneously under 10-year plan consideration and TAP consideration. How does that work? We had a similar example 2 years ago with the phase 7 of the Londonderry Rail Trail, which they had submitted for 10-year plan consideration and CMAQ consideration at the same time. It ended up being funded by CMAQ, which freed up the corresponding amount that we had programmed for it in our 10-year plan allocation, which we were able to deploy for another purpose. So if Windham got tap funding for this project, theoretically, we'd be able to do the same thing that we did 2 years ago with the Londonderry example, which is, you know, potentially use what's freed up in our regional allocation for other purposes.
When would that decision for the TIP be made if this were to be funded with the TAP? Like, when would we determine when that allocation comes?
Yeah, what I think, I'm not quite abreast on the DOT's current TAP announcement timeline. Our TAP submissions are due by the end of April. And I think DOT will take a few weeks after that to do their, you know, their final, I would guess, May or June, in terms of when we might have an idea about TAP.
Right, and then these projects also go into the draft 10-year plan. And once they, each regions give their priorities, and then the DOT ranks projects, and then the projects get listed in the draft 10-year plan, and it goes to the public hearing process, through the gassing process.
Yeah.
Or do you consider phasing the rail trail contract?
Yes, the VHB estimate broke it off into 3 separate segments. So that's an option as well. And our local trails committee, they're still pursuing doing the project locally based on those segments. They might chip away at it a segment at a time. So yeah, we're pursuing it at many tables. It's going to spend an idea in town for 20 years. Progress.
So yeah, we did have VHB scope potential phases for the project. That is always an option. We'll talk about what my recommendation here is in a few minutes. And then we can have a discussion. City of Manchester, this project, the exit 8 Wellington Road interchange improvements. You might recall the area on the screen here. I think we added it in the last 10-year plan update cycle for the intersection improvements and bicycle lanes kind of within the immediate exit 8 area. This project, the proposal here is supplemental funding to extend the bicycle lanes east to Lindstrom Lane. That was always kind of the grand idea of the project. We only had enough in the previous 10-year plan cycle to do kind of a scaled back version of this. This would, you know, kind of finish the full vision of that project with the bicycle lanes east to Lindstrom. And VHB's estimate was 1.74 million in today's dollars. DOT concurred with that without change. And so that year of expenditure basis ends up being just under, you know, $2.45 million. This is an interesting one. Town of New Boston. This was the kind of intersection improvements and town center improvements that came out of a context sensitive solutions process from about 15 years ago with New Hampshire DOT, Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, and the town. We provided all of that context sensitive solutions work to VHB. They developed a concept, and there was a significant difference in cost here. VHB's estimate was $654,000. DOT's estimate in today's dollars was $2 million. I think DOT has some concerns about that things that you don't see perhaps in this picture that are important to address. In particular, drainage improvements, and there's some drainage issues in this particular area that may be a little bit of a can of worms to deal with, it sounds like. And so DOT envisions, you know, because of the drainage issues, some, you know, substantially more work than we had originally anticipated. And of that $2 million, $750,000 was DOT's estimate for engineering phase work. There's a lot of engineering for a project like this. Yeah, there's and that 2 million in year of expenditure basis is just under 3 million. Becomes just under 3 million all in. the town of Auburn, this little skewed rail trail crossing, we talked about it a few times. We had VHB scope it. It is their recommendation was basically a rectangular rapid flashing beacon with some minor geometric improvements. Their estimate was $113,500 and DOT's was the same. That becomes 161 on a year of expenditure basis. This one we had some discussion about. DOT's perspective is that they would require this to be an LPA project managed and matched by the town of Auburn. I don't, frankly, fully understand why that's their perspective. I didn't get a chance to talk to Bill Oldenburg about this, specifically. To us, neither the rail trail nor Route 121 are owned or managed by the town of Auburn. So requiring the town to manage that project and match it, was a bit of a head scratcher for us. I talked with the town about it yesterday to see if that was something that was going to be acceptable to them and whether or not they wanted us to continue pursuing this project as part of the 10-year plan, and those terms were not acceptable. So we're gonna, after consultation with the town, we're gonna remove this project from 10-year plan consideration. I don't think there's interest in the town in managing or matching this particular project.
A huge chunk of that money for engineering.
Yeah. So this one, after talking with the town, yeah, we're gonna pull this from consideration. Where does that leave us? And this is kind of what I was working on yesterday and trying to figure out what I could bring to you in a coherent way. What's the best possible allocation of our regional, or what's the best possible deployment of our regional allocation that moves as much forward as we can? And this is what I came up with. Basically, both Manchester projects, the Bedford project, the Hooksett project, and the Wyndham project, we could fund in their entirety at the DOT's estimated costs. And the question then becomes New Boston, and my proposal to you, and you can accept or reject this proposal or modify it as you see fit, was that we could potentially move the ball forward in New Boston by programming the PE and right-of-way phases of that project. Now, that comes with a caveat, because that would mean that we would be making essentially a commitment to go in 2 years' time and fund the construction portion of that project out of our subsequent regional allocation. We have done that. For those of you who've been around a while, we have done that a number of times over the years, where the Bedford Route 3 project, we went back and got that fully funded in future cycles. The Wyndham Route 28 and Ralston Road project, we got that funded in future cycles. This may be a way of getting the New Boston project in the 10-year plan, but with that caveat of we would be committing to fund the construction component off the top of our next regional allocation in 2 years. And the construction component is $1.2 million in today's dollars. And that equates to, I think, just under 2 million on a year of expenditure basis. So we would be essentially committing about 20% of our allocation 2 years from now to the construction phase of that project by adding the PE and right-of-way phase. What do y'all think?
It would have to be done in 2 years. It couldn't be eligible later session.
I like
Construction committee.
we would do it at the next opportunity. Yeah. No, the expectation would be that we do it in the next cycle.
The commitment, the project is 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm looking at, could be, because I'm so glad that those guys figured out that there could be a problem with the water that's hidden. A lot of stuff is, I can drive down to that intersection from further away and I always wondered, where did that disappeared stream go? And I suspect it comes out of into the granite runway. I mean, there's like major stuff there that's gonna have to be massaged. It'll be expensive. Doesn't look like anything until you actually look at it, and then I was like, holy crap, this is gonna cost a lot. So.
Does this seem,
Seems like a reason.
does this seem like a reasonable approach and regional? Yeah.
On paper and speech.
Yeah, it was, you know, it was definitely trying to figure out how to come to something, how to digest the comments that we got yesterday, talk through some things with DOT and bring something coherent to you today that, you know, I think is a reasonable deployment of our allocation.
Yeah. Ask for a recommendation.
Yes, yeah, we need to submit our deployment of our regional allocation by the end of March. And that basically means that the MPO needs to decide that on Tuesday.
Can we add to, let's say we go as a group with Nate's proposal here and recommendation. Can we add to that recommendation that DOT revisit Auburn's application and as a DOT run project? Can we make that recommendation? Because I can understand, otherwise you can see that is wonky, what you showed, it's a weird angle. People are using the trails quite consistently. I think I don't want a safety issue to happen before it's finally, oh, we better do something. I'd rather just ask them to reconsider it as a DOT managed project versus an LPA.
That is a safety concern for travel. Live in Auburn, so
yeah.
Especially like the use is going to start ramping up now. So between now and like first foot of snow, it's not.
You know, yeah, and it's so low. I mean, 100 and change, 115 or something.
It's used by a lot of people. Yeah, that's mostly what we see. You're stopping for people. It's on bikes or strollers.
So I guess I'll just say this. I have brought the Auburn location to the safety section folks at DOT with a request that they consider funding it out of their HSIP funds and or trying to append it to another safety project that they have going on that's state managed. And I have also expressed our position that it should not be an LPA managed project. I think there's a lot of case to be made that this project doesn't really belong in the 10-year plan anyway.
Right.
Does it make any sense for us to wait till 2036 for a rectangular rapid flashing beacon at a skewed rail trail crossing?
Right.
And I suspect that if people DOT would agree with that, but at the same time, we have raised it to the safety section folks at DOT. We have asked them to consider it for HSIP. We have told them that we don't think it's an LPA project. And this is where we're at this point. So we have had those conversations for a number of months now, and they haven't yielded anything, to be perfectly frank.
I think if the full TAC though supports that position and it's within the recommendation, I think that would, instead of just, I mean, it's not just SNHPC's opinion, but I just think it adds to that.
Chris say, I don't think there's anybody in Auburn who's LPA certified.
I talked with Chris yesterday about it. I asked him, I said, do you want us? I told him, about the LPA kind of requirement and asked him whether or not, I didn't want to put the town of Auburn on the hook for managing and matching a project that they weren't expecting to manage or match. And, we discussed it, and Chris and I both agreed that it wasn't appropriate for the town to do that. And so they may raise this through state reps in town and they may bring this up through other avenues. But in terms of the 10-year plan, it's probably a non-starter at this point.
Mine was so suggestion, with already still want to be included in them.
I'm sure they'd be much more open to it in that scenario.
Nate?
Yes, Bill.
Good morning, and good morning, everybody. I apologize. I've been listening in the background. This is Bill Watson with New Hampshire DOT. Nate, I just for clarification, so I like the phrasing you're using that the town of Auburn doesn't think it's appropriate for them to manage it. We don't disagree. We're saying we're not right now, the recommendation is it's not necessarily the most appropriate for DOT to. We're not requiring it to be an LPA project. If they'd like to be, if the town and Southern New Hampshire would like to have further conversation with the department, there's nothing in the memo that you received yesterday from us that says it has to be Auburn or it's a no-go. We're just saying that we think it's at the scale of the project that it's at and at the type of residents it's serving, it's not a department priority and it would be more appropriate to be managed at the local level. But the wording is there, the wiggle room is there. We can continue the conversation. We don't want the town of Auburn to pull the project from consideration because they think we are forcing this down their throat. That is not the case.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we could continue to talk about it, after the meeting or through other channels, but I had requested that language be modified in the letter, and I think the department chose to not to modify it. So
I'm just stating that we did not say, and I'm happy to share it. Maybe you can with the text so they're clear. We did not say we are going to require the town of Auburn to manage this project. There's nothing in that letter that you received from us yesterday that says that.
Bill, I'm just curious. This is Sylvia. What's the thought about it coming out of the 10-year plan and into the HSIP sort of program? Where it's
I believe what Nate's already heard from the HSIP section is they don't have the capacity to add that project in right now.
Okay.
It's simply a funding capacity issue.
Project, knowing that projects in the bottom of the list.
Well, in 2-year top, 4-year top, 4 years, but it's still a match issue. It sounds like the town is saying it is not, they don't own the rail trail, they don't own the road. So I guess they don't feel they should pay their percentage of match.
yeah, and the letter does, the DOT letter does indicate that the town would be paying the match. It does say that. And we asked kind of specifically for that language to not be in there. And it's in there. So that was sort of the hang up and that brought us to where we're at.
So it sounds like more study needs to be done to indicate why match wouldn't have to be made. Like if it's not getting, if we don't have enough information to prove that the use is warranted, the state to pay for it, then the state shouldn't be paying for it, is what they're saying. And I have to agree with that. It's not fun to say, but I agree with it. It's makes sense.
The state typically does not, the state DOT does not typically provide match for projects along trail connections.
Yes.
Whether they are crossing a state road, whether they're crossing a local road, whether they're going through the woods like the Wyndham project that's being considered. Typically, alternative transportation projects are considered to be serving the local and the regional users. And the DOT consistently across the state does not provide match to that. We're happy to have further conversation about it, but that's where we start with all projects.
I guess I would not support the amendment to.
I hear you.
This be classified as a connectivity project and not more so like a safety project?
I think it's a safety.
Yeah, but he's saying they don't traditionally support like rail trail connectivity projects, and I at least didn't interpret that as any sort of.
It's, you know, it's a rail trail crossing. I think DOT in general, they try to have bike ped projects be locally managed and locally matched. In this case, it's a state-owned trail and a state-owned road. Town of Auburn doesn't feel like it's their responsibility to match it. State feels like they should match it. And for that reason, here we are, and that's why we're pulling.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, every 10-year project, in order for it to be a 10-year project, they have to have a match commitment. So I don't even know how it got this far.
It's in Auburn, right?
It's in Auburn, yeah.
Well, you know, when they sell homes in Auburn, they advertise that. I don't know why. Yeah, I can see why they wouldn't want to do the LPA portion. Why they would be able to take it off the taxes with rail that they clearly use.
Hate to say it, but it sounds pretty cheap to me. If this raises town, we probably would pay, pipe up to 20% because we would want it.
Yeah.
We would want it done. We would want it. And if it's that important, if you're selling real estate based on the rail trail, you want to make sure that the people who buy the new houses are going to be happy.
All right, so it gets pulled for now.
I would like to go back to the New Boston one. I'm considering amending this drawing that New Boston one. I see that as the can of worms was a really good statement that you made, because I believe there could be two cans of worms there. And I'm not sure that we're ready. I'm not sure that we won't be shocked at how much it really could cost in the construction phase to fix that roundabout stuff.
Well, wait, this is New Boston?
New Boston. New Boston's on the bottom right now. I would consider withdrawing the proposed change to the PE and right of way for this year, because then we're guaranteed to be committed in 2 years' time. But I suspect that the commitment I suspect that being asked in 2 years to commit to the construction costs, that those construction costs are going to be significantly higher than the currently thought of proposed construction costs. But we're already committed, right? If we do this proposal and vote to spend money on the PE and right of way costs, my understanding is we are then committed in 2 years to the construction phase costs, right?
We would fund the construction phase.
My suspicion is, my inclination is that in 2 years' time, the projected construction costs are going to be way higher than we're thinking now.
Can you go back to the New Boston slide?
Made another consideration is the fact that every 2 years, when you look at your 10-year plan and the projects that are in the existing 10-year plan, if they determine that, they don't want to include it because they found that construction costs where you can always. We
can always strike the project, and yeah.
Well, yes, there would be the commitment to, if you put the PE and right away in now, there is a commitment for the next cycle to put the construction costs.
Right.
But at some point in the future, as with every 2-year cycle, the RPCs reach out to the communities and say, do you still support the projects that are in the 10-year plan? If not, then they can ask that it be withdrawn.
Okay, that's what I was getting to before with the 2 years and putting it off.
If you look at actually is being proposed in New Boston, you would never arrive at the conclusion that it's a $2 million project there without there being some sort of significant. DOT is clearly concerned about some significant latent drainage issue that you.
So am I.
Yeah, and so it's, it is what it is. The town of New Boston strongly supports this project. They've been working on scoping this project for the last 15 years ago. They started it. They still strongly support wholeheartedly the implementation of this project, which they started planning for in 2009, 2008. And so, and we do have the ability in our regional allocation to fund the PE and right of way. The PE is $750,000. And there's always a possibility. There's two possibilities here. There's always a possibility that DOT is being conservative in this estimate, and maybe the latent conditions aren't as bad as we might think they are, and maybe it works out in our favor. Or B, if the alternative happens, then maybe the project isn't viable and we strike it in a future cycle. If that really does come to fruition.
It seems going to the next phase would be good, and then they'll figure out, you know, all the issues, so.
Okay, I withdraw my request to amend.
I had a question about this one. I know that it was part of the context sensitive. Whatever drainage improvement that's needed, like it was a part of the discussion. If you add that, you go back to consider that planning effort again and make sure that there's still support for the project. Because when I hear drainage improvements and context sensitive solutions, sometimes they don't. And I want to make sure that they're implementing when they think they're implementing.
Yeah.
That's a big gap.
Yeah, we could talk to the town about it. I know that that drainage issues were brought up kind of, in the CSS process. I wasn't around for the CSS process, and I don't think anybody who's currently with the town of New Boston was there either. So we're all sort of catching up on the CSS process that happened back in that 2008, 2009 timeframe. But I know that they took the minutes and slideshows and concepts that were developed and vetted those, I believe, with their select board and other boards in town, that yielded this, and they have all continued to express strong, unanimous support for moving forward with it.
Well, I don't have an objection to leaving it in, remembering that that's what I thought, that every 2 years we get to look at it and decide if it's no longer feasible at that time. So I would move, if there's no further discussion and you're ready, I would move that we vote to support the proposed lineup as being presented.
I can put it back on the screen.
No, it's been withdrawn.
No, that's been.
So just to clarify, you can withdraw a project, but only up until the point that one of those phases have been obligated, right? Like at what point do you have to move forward, or you have to reimburse federal highway for the funds that they expended?
That's a good question. Typically in every 10-year plan cycle, DOT asks us, we always focus on what are the new projects, because that's what but we always ask towns to tell us if something has changed in a project where it's no longer needed, or, a scope change has happened in a project that's significant enough that we need to pay for it. We almost never hear from towns that say, yeah, this project doesn't make sense anymore and we should pull it. I think only once in my career has a town ever said that to me, and I've been doing this is my 11th 10-year plan. So I think if something went into the 10-year plan, let's see, New Boston, I'm just going to look at the letter here. New Boston will have PE in 2032, right of way in 2034, construction in 2036. So they're not really going to be spending anything until at least 2032. So we will have 2, if not 3 10-year plan cycles to revisit this project before we would, any money would be spent on it. So this is, we'll have multiple bites of the apple on refining this project. Yeah. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I think your answer is great, Nate. I think the more Maggie, I think the question you might be asking more directly is the point of no return is the actual first obligation of money. So as long as a project is hanging out there in the further years of the 10-year plan, until there is an obligation of federal highway, they've given us permission to spend money. There's no financial obligation to the town. You're right. In a case like New Boston, Nate, that project will be hanging out there for a couple more cycles before we actually begin work on it, where we would ask federal highway for that first obligation of funds.
Bill, while you're on the call, and thanks for being here today. It's definitely helpful. Do you have any issues or concerns with the program that I just put up on the screen a minute ago? You know, what we would propose to use our allocation for and how
No,
I know
think
we
that's
exchanged an email, but I don't, since you're on the call, maybe,
yeah, I
are
think your
there any
approach is
concerns?
reasonable. I
Okay.
think your approach is reasonable, certainly.
All right.
I think Linda made a motion, right?
Favor? All opposed? Thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
That's good. We have Lucy abstained.
Sorry, we went over time today. But good discussion, and it was, all stuff we needed to deal with today, so thank you.
All right, any other business? Okay, second, anybody?
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, you do have to have it. Do we? Well, it says we must.
All right, let's go with it. All in favor of adjourning?
Thanks, everybody, for your time.
Yeah, we haven't had site discussion.